All right, so check it out. New bucket. I'm just playing. This is my boy's car, but I'm gonna show y'all how to do a manual swap. I started to do a manual swap video a while ago, but I forgot when I first started trying to make YouTube, I was recording it vertical. I got like halfway through it, and then I realized I should have did it horizontal. So now is a perfect time. I'm gonna be taking the drivetrain out of this busted ass thing. One of our other homies totally, I mean, this is totaled, bro. Wow. I mean, wow. But whole drivetrain is still good. So got the whole manual drivetrain and a good motor still, good rev up. So we're gonna be pulling this one. Just went and got my hoist. Be pulling this one out, taking all the stuff apart, just take it, basically stripping this part of all the good parts, and then manual swapping. Because, you know, if you have a full manual car with all the components, just take everything, just swap it in there. That's the best way to do a manual swap, is if you find a whole car that's total like this is literally perfect example. If you find a blown up car or a totaled car that's manual, that's the best way, because you get everything in once. And even if you want to upgrade some stuff like get a new clutch, that's cool, but at least at very first you can get everything working good, and then you can upgrade shit from there. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to back this up a little bit so I can use a hoist on the cement, and then I'm going to pull everything out of this, and then we'll start taking this apart. All right, guys, so we're going to start by taking this car apart. I'm going to take the motor and trans out of this car, and then there's a few things you're going to need for a manual swap. You're going to need this clutch reservoir and this line that goes down to the master cylinder that's right by the pedal, which you'll also need. You'll need the shifter. There are a couple different ways you can try to fit up the center console, so we'll take that too. You'll need the drive shaft, or at least just the front half of the drive shaft are different between the autos and the manuals. Then you'll need that clutch line that comes down from up there where the master cylinder's at, and then the slave cylinder, then obviously all the transmission stuff. So the throw-out bearing, the clutch, the flywheel, and then a pilot bearing too. And I'll show you guys when we get into that, but I always get new pilot bearings. It's not worth it to try to take one out and then reuse it. It's most likely going to get bad while you take it out. So I'm probably not going to cover taking the whole motor and trans out. I'll cover it another time, but honestly, compared to other cars, it's real simple. It is not very hard compared to a lot of other cars. And so just like a quick run through, take everything that's attached from the left side, take the full wiring harness out and flop it over the motor. You go down in there in the interior of the car on the passenger side, you just disconnect the few connectors. It's like 3 or 4 of them, sometimes only 2, depending what year you got. Disconnect from the ECU, pull it up out this hole, and then flop it right over. And then on the left side, there's power steering, there's a couple grounds, and your motor mounts, obviously. And that's really it for the left side. And then your heater hoses in the back. There's one on each side. Then for the right side, there's AC. There is your fuel rail. That's actually on the left side too. Or your fuel line that you got to disconnect it from. And then one other thing I'm forgetting. But basically, and then all the trans mount and the drive shaft and stuff. But these drive shafts are slip-in type, so you really don't have to do anything with it. Once you start pulling it out, it'll come right out. And every single one I do, I just take off the front clip. It makes it so much easier. You can just get straight access right there and then pull it out. All right, guys. So starting on this manual swap, first things first, get the auto trans out. So all I did was jack it up, get my spot set up a little bit. So this car sat in a field for like a year. So there's all sorts of stuff down here, but never mind that. This is auto trans, obviously. And then this car didn't really have much of an exhaust. It only had the wide pipe that's cut. And so that's, I mean, it's literally just 4 bolts, probably 14s. And so I just took that off. But anyway, so now it's just get everything that's connected to the trans off so you can take it out, right? So what I'm doing right now is getting these wires. These are O2 sensor wires, which have been clipped off just from being so low. It literally scraped them off. And then this is a crankshaft position sensor, which is right there, which is kind of hurting from the same thing, from just being so low that it hit it backwards. And so I think I'm going to replace that. But anyway, you just want to, there's a bunch of these clips, right? So you can use a fork tool like this to kind of just get up under it like that and twist it off. And so I'm going to start on the harness, but up on this side is like the main harness. On this side, there's only a starter wire right here, which you just unplug. And then the harness is up here, the connectors. And so there's like 3 of them on all the older cars. Take those off. But for better room, since you can see there's not a lot of access right there, you can drop the trans down some by removing the trans mount, and it'll kind of hang down and give you some more room. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then it'll also give you better access to the top bell housing bolts for the trans. And so it's really just that. The bell housing bolts, obviously. And you can't forget on auto transmissions, most of them, well, all of them have a port that you can take off. There's this bolt, and then this whole plate comes off to where you can get to the torque converter bolts. And you need to take those 4 off. And then there's the transmission cooler lines right here, which we'll end up removing, which just connect right up there with those bolts. And then the trans mount, the drive shaft just slips out, so we don't got to do much with that. Well, never mind. Since we are just taking the trans out and leaving the motor in, we will just have to remove that. And then go from there. And I like to drain the transmission as well, just so it doesn't get fluid everywhere. Because once you lean it down and you're trying to wiggle it out, a bunch of fluid's going to leak out. So, all right, sorry about the heater noise. I know it's loud, but there's this nut for the gear lever. It just hangs down. It's really simple. The gear lever is back there, and then it just comes onto this little hinge and bolts right onto this nut. And it's a 17. So I like to use my little flex head long ratchet and then just break it free and take it all the way off. And then you'll kind of have to wiggle this flange back and forth until it pops off, and then you're good for that. So I got the auto trans out. I kind of showed y'all how to do that. And the last thing I forgot to mention in that video is the dipstick, the auto trans dipstick. I literally just cut it off because I'm not about to use it again. The trans is blown, so it doesn't really matter to me. So I just cut it off because there's like on the back of the motor when you're taking the trans off, right above the trans on the back of the motor, there's a bolt with a bracket that holds the dipstick, so you have to take that off. So I just cut it to make it easier. So now getting started on this thing. So once you got your clutch lines, this is a clutch line that goes in the wheel well, goes down to the slave cylinder. Then you'll have the fluid container, whatever. And then this is a master cylinder. And then the clutch fork that, well, not the clutch fork, but the fork that bolts onto the back of the pedal. And then this would be your pedal. So basically this is going to go right down here, right there. And as you can see, if we go to the other side, it is right where the parking brake is. So you have to get that parking brake off first. So there's 2 nuts, 2 12s up there, and right behind there. You can see what I'm talking about on those 2 brackets, those gold ones. So those, and then those. And then you take this off. You can either cut this cable or take it out. And you can take it completely out, but honestly, in the past, I've just kind of tucked it back behind the carpet and just left it, and you would never even notice it's there. So I'm gonna get started on that. All I've taken off so far is just the basic trim pieces. I haven't done nothing crazy at all. So this is how it'll look for you guys. So I'm gonna take this out, and then I'll show you what you have to do next. All right, so just to give y'all a tip, I like to use a ratcheting wrench for those bolts, just so you can kind of get on it easy, and then get it loose, and then just get up there with your hand and spin it off. All right, so now comes the hardest part of the swap. First of all, there's just all this rubber mat, or this cloth mat. You gotta just slice where you need to and get it out of the way. So once you pull the parking brake off, this is what that mounts to, this bracket. And this is directly in the way of where the clutch pedal will go. Since it's raised up and stuff, I'm pretty sure people online make some sort of manual bracket that can, like, where you can just bolt on the pedal or whatever, but I've never done that. I haven't done a whole lot of research about it. I've just heard some stuff. So what you do is on each one of these little spot welds that you can see, those little circles, there's like 7 of them. 3 over here, and then these 4. So you take, I love this thing, this little drill that's a 90-degree angle. You just get up in there and drill all of those out. You want to try not to go too deep. If you can just drill it out enough to where it breaks the welds, that is perfect. If you happen to go through the firewall, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So drill all those out, and then this is kind of sealed all the way around. And so this might take you literally like an hour and a half. This is literally the worst part of the swap. But in a way, it's kind of good peace of mind, because this being the hardest part kind of, you know, make you feel better about it, really. So sometimes you gotta get like a flathead after you're done taking all these off. You gotta get a flathead and a hammer up in here and kind of knock it up and just break this whole seal, and then remove this bracket, and then we can start measuring and make our first cut for the master cylinder, the clutch master. So I'm gonna get started on that and then show you guys what's up. All right, as you can see, I drilled all the holes out, the spot welds, and then you kind of, to start off, this will be flat, right? You can put a screwdriver in here and kind of pry and try to break one of these corners, the seal, and then get behind it with a screwdriver and pop it off. But it is a lot harder than it sounds. Don't think it's just gonna happen in 30 minutes, or I mean in 3 minutes. So now that this is off, kind of see how it's sealed around the edge. But now that this is off, you have that, right? You want to paint all this just with a little bit of spray paint or whatever, so it doesn't rust. And then I've actually made a template based off this right here. I'll insert a photo, but I've made a little cardboard template. I went over to a manual car that's factory manual, one of my buddies, or actually just another one I had at the time, and then just measured from here and cut out a piece of cardboard that was the same length as the very center of the hole you have to cut for the master cylinder. So So this goes into the car like that, right? Like I said, this part sits right down in that pocket and it goes in. So that's what I measured to, kind of the right there where that has to be inside the car, so I can drill that hole out. And then you can actually use this gasket. See how that's coming off? You can use a gasket. Once you drill this hole, you can use it as a template and put it up there so you know where to drill these holes. And it's pretty important you get this right, because if you don't, this is what the pedal bolts to on the inside of the car. So if you get it like cocked like this, your pedal is going to be way off like that. You want it to be perfectly straight, and for the master cylinder too. So it's pretty important you really take your time and measure it correctly. I've done it 4 or 5 times now, and so I got it down pretty good, and it even, my first couple times went pretty good. So just take your time. Once you get this done, it's like a big relief. Then all you have to do is slap on the pilot bearing in the back of the motor, slap on the trans. You'll have to cut out just a little bit of the trans tunnel like I'll show you later. But for the most part, once you get this part done, this is the hard part. Once it's done, it's a cakewalk. So just take your time, do it right, measure twice, cut once, more like measure like 4 or 5 times just to be absolutely sure. Because the other thing is, if you can imagine, this fitting down there in between all that stuff is a tight fit. So you really can't get it even like an inch off, or else it won't even fit down there. The only way you can do it is to like put the master cylinder sideways so those ears fit, and then one of them will be like a little behind this brake booster. So you need to get that pretty spot on. And it is cool because it does have provisions, even the auto cars, for these bolts for like the fluid container. And then, yeah. So I'm gonna keep going on this. I'll show you guys the next step. All right, so now I got my little baby pilot hole drilled just so I could go and see from the other side. You can actually see I made some attempts. My cardboard template kind of got messed up, and so I just made these 3 holes so you can actually come around. Let me turn this damn heater off so you can actually see it from this side. So if you look down there, those are the 3 holes, and the bottom one seems to be in the best spot, just so it'll fit pretty good. Oh, hell that is. And so also what you can do, I would definitely recommend grabbing the pedal and just placing it up there. And between, you can go off of these 2 holes for reference. Right in the center of those is where your main hole for the master is going to be. So if you get it up there and line it up with the hole you've made and just kind of get it in the center, you can see where the pedal itself is going to sit. Like right about there, which is basically perfect. It's nice and flat and straight. And then what you'll do anyway is cut this in half, unless you want to put the manual brake pedal in. But if you just want it done and working, you just cut this in half and then grab the brake pedal cover off the manual one and put it over. So then, instead of it being, let's see, instead of it being real close like that, you'll have an even amount of space, and that'll fit perfect. So now I'm gonna go ahead and drill your hole out to the size of the master cylinder, which I use a step bit for because it drills pretty easy, because it has to be this diameter, right? The diameter of this, because this pokes through, and that's where your bolt holes go, like I was showing you. So Try to be pretty close to that exact size so it fits in there good. And then, yeah. Let me show you which drill bit I use. This step bit. This. So you can just kind of go as you can just kind of drill as you go and then get bigger and finally get to a point where you got to stop. All right, y'all. So now we got the pedal bolted in. As you can see, 1 bolt, 2 bolt. And it's looking pretty good. I cut the pedal, and that looks pretty good. So now up here, we also got the master cylinder in there, all sandwiched up against a firewall, running to our fluid container, and then coming down here to the line. So right here, I should have showed y'all this better. My fault about that. But this line, you just unplug these, right? Pull them out of the way so that line can come straight up and out, because that line goes right down there into, let's see, right into the master cylinder right there. It's a 10mm. So I like to leave the master cylinder kind of loose. Like I'll put it in there, put the pedal on the other side and start the bolts and leave it loose, and then put this line in there loose and then get it started first so you don't mess up the threads. So now we're going to start on the pilot bushing and the clutch and stuff. So with these G's and Z's, really any of the VQs, the automatics have pilot bearings. So you have to get this out. It's sat right in there, and you have to pop it out. And a normal pilot bearing puller doesn't really work too well because there's not a big lip exposed in the back. And so you just put some bread in there, find something like a chisel that fits in there real tight, and then just hammer. And eventually, after a full like 2 pieces of bread, it'll pop it out. So then you just clean the bread out of the back of the motor, and then I'll show you guys, but you'll put in your manual pilot bushing for the trans to sit into. So there's that new bushing pressed in. Just took a socket, just tap it lightly. You don't want to go too hard because you can mess up this surface and then the trans won't want to slide in right. So now we're gonna take the manual trans off the old motor, the clutch and the flywheel, and put it all on here. All right, so now we got the clutch and the flywheel on. You literally just bolt both of them on. They got certain locating pins so you can't get it wrong. And then just use the clutch alignment tool when you're putting it on. No offense whatsoever, but if you don't know how to put on a clutch, I probably wouldn't go about trying to do a manual swap, just because it'll probably be super frustrating. So now that that's on, trans is ready to go on. Throw the trans on, put in all the bell housing bolts, secure it, make sure it goes nice and smooth and goes completely flush and doesn't bind up or anything. Make sure you get your starter lined up right. And then, you know what? Now that I look at it, I'll actually probably take that out first, which is the shifter assembly from the automatic. So take that out, then bolt the trans up, and then the manual trans reaches a little farther back, so you have to, I'll show you guys when I do it in the interior, but you go inside and then you just make some slits and cut a little bit of metal away to be able to put the shifter and all that on. So get to it. All right, guys, so I got a little ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I really wish I would have remembered just to pick the phone up and record for you guys, but it's nothing crazy. I think you'll get the feel of what I'm saying. So, like I said, I got all that stuff right. And then that line I was talking about goes down there. It comes right down to here. So these are just the other section of the line. Whenever I take it off, I took it off from right there. It's just a 10 mil. So I put that back on. And then there are these two. There's that one too, if you can get a long enough self-tapper. But I just put some self-tappers in there to hold it in the factory location. It tucks right behind the fender liner, and it should never get hit. Then it goes right through that space. Let me come down here and show you. Goes right through that space, right around here. That part just hangs out up there and comes right to the slave cylinder. Just bolts right to the trans. Speaking of which, got the trans on. So I had the clutch. I showed you guys all that. Got all that on. Just put the trans up here, slipped it in. Make sure it went in good. Put all the bell housing bolts in. That's simple. And so right now, I just ran this wire, this part of the harness that goes to the crank sensor. And then these are O2s. Those will have to get rewired, obviously. They were already pretty messed up. And then with these on this side of the harness, these are all the auto connectors, all the auto trans connectors. So you can just zip tie them up in the safe spot where they won't get, you know, on fire from the cats or nothing, and just leave them chilling. Obviously, they won't plug into the manual one. And then your starter wire, it's on, breaks off of the harness, comes right to the starter, right over there. There's just this connector that plugs right in it. So that's about all the rest I've gotten done, other than removing the auto shifter assembly. It's pretty simple, guys. You just take off, you just lift up on this part, and it'll just lift up right there and pull out. Just take off bolts, 410s right there that hold the shifter on. And then the only other important thing is this connects to the auto shifter. And you have to pull this out. You see how it kind of goes in and out? You have to leave it pulled out, because if it's in, for whatever reason, it'll stop the key from actually spinning. So with the out, it'll free spin. Just make sure you do that. And so now, once this, I'll jack this up and you'll be able to see, but it'll kind of be cut off. That shifter hole will be cut off. So that's what I was talking about. You just have to kind of slice some metal out right here to make room for that shifter. All right, guys. So I'm going to show you the only, well, not the only wiring to really do a manual swap 100% complete, because you also, to have it totally right, you should do the reverse lights and I think whatever other sensors on the trans. I'm gonna sound stupid for that, but you know, all you have to do to get it driving and running and have a manual car and go drift it is this right here. So you tap in to this wire that's gray with the red stripe right there. By tap in, I mean strip away some of the protective coating and then tape a wire to it real nice. Don't have it all janky. But what's it called? You don't cut this wire at all. You just leave it how it is. Just take off with the razor, take off some of the protective sheathing, and then add that wire, run it back here, whatever you want to do, and I'll put on a little circle, damn, I don't know the name of that, but connect it to the power so it gets power at all times. That's your park/neutral switch for the automatic, which reads that, hey, the car is in park, or hey, the car is in neutral, so it'll allow it to start. Because if you don't do that and you manual swap it and you ripped out all the auto stuff, then it's not going to know. You know what I mean? It's still on the stock auto ECU and the BCM and all that. And that won't cause any other problems. It won't cause any like running problems or anything like that, but it will be looking for a park or a neutral switch or a signal. And so that's all you have to do. Give it full power, and then it's good. And it's just right back there. So now that that's done, it's just a couple things left. Really, all the hard part is over. Got the wiring done. Got trans in. All that stuff swapped over. The clutch lines, the master cylinder, the pedal. Now let's just clean everything up, throw in the drive shaft. If some fluid leaked out of the trans, which most likely it will, fill it with some fluid, and then start it. So I'm just going to clean a few things up. I'll show you guys what I do afterwards, and then give it a first start. All right. So this is what I was talking about. So this is the original auto trans hole, and this is the manual trans coming up. So you can see it just gets cut off a little bit. Just trim that. I just use the angle grinder. Bam. Right off. Then you got room, and then you can just kind of build some sort of a center console around it. I think I might try to repurpose the auto one, because I was looking at it and it kind of fits up. It might be too high though, so we'll see what we got going on. But yep, that's all you do as far as that. The shifter just bolts on like that, just all kind of one piece. Just set it down in there, 3 10mm bolts. Then this bolt will go through the bottom and go right through there to hold it in to the trans, the lever. So this is what I was talking about. Just put that right on there. Take that bolt. A little hard to do one-handed. Hold on. Slide it right through. Tighten it up. There's the trans. Oh yeah. And I highly recommend, if you have like a junk auto drive shaft or something that you can just cut. I don't know where this came from, but it just showed up one day, and it's so great because it holds all the fluid in the trans so none leaks out. It's perfect. Alright, so I just put the transmission mount on. Just put it up there, bolt right there, 4 bolts right there to the chassis. Real easy. Alright, so on G35s, I know on 350Zs they all have 1-piece drive shafts, but on Gs you can split them. They're 2-piece, so you can split them right in half real easy. Just how these are is how it is back there. So you just take these bolts off. All you need for a manual swap is the front drive shaft. Just slips right into the trans and bolts up right here. You can leave this back one. You don't have to change the whole thing. Got all the plastics and stuff back on. Looking fresh in there. And then we got our clutch bled. Got the lines running down. And then your slave cylinder bolted on right here. Got it bled and the clutch is working. Got the drive shaft on. And it's all ready to drive now. So we already started it up. It runs good and everything. No problems. As long as you do that one wire, like I said, the park neutral switch wire, then it should have no problems. So now the clutch is bled, everything's in there, everything's cleaned up, the shifter's on and all that. It's basically drivable. So start right up, bro. Definitely gonna scrape leaving. Well, there it is. Hope y'all liked the video. I'm glad I could give you guys a tutorial on it because I get so many questions on how I get them done and about the pedal and some stuff like that. So yeah, there's a manual swap on a G, at least the older kind. The newer kind are basically the same. But as you notice, I didn't put any videos of the car running and driving or drifting around like I usually would, just because unfortunately that car had a limp mode problem. When he started actually trying to drive it around and stuff, it was just going in limp mode. Probably being as it sat in the field for a couple years, and it's an early '03 car, which I highly advise you guys don't get if you're looking around for a G and it's an early '03. You can tell by the VIN sticker on the door for the date code it was produced if it's one of the earlier ones. And you can also tell if you look at the bottom of the ECU, if the ECU is white and silver, just don't get it. They come with a lot of electrical gremlins and stuff like that, so I don't advise that. It doesn't have anything to do with the manual swap. I've done a whole bunch of other manual swaps on the early '03 cars and it's fine. So if you already have one that's auto and it runs great and it's not on a limb mode or anything like that, don't be, shied away from doing a manual swap on it. At that point, if it's already running good and it's not on a limb mode or nothing like that, you're good to go. So, yeah, hope y'all liked it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Comment what you want to see next. And you know how it goes. So, all right. Peace.